it's in keeping with a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But it's just kind of funny because you don't often, I guess, these days hear about them taking things out of a movie when they re-release it. But in the case of Father Stu, they're taking things out, mostly the swears and the sex stuff, from what I understand, because they want to roll this bad boy out again during Holy Week, because the algorithm has told them there's still fucking money out there, boys. You just have to try again. It's like the Passion of the Christ did this. They released a more palatable version of the Passion of the Christ, at the time, because, there was just too much gore and violence and anti-Semitism, at play. But as far as this movie is concerned, like, what is the takeaway for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly they're trying to make more money. I think this movie only did like 21 million at the box office against a $20 million budget. So they like barely broke even. And I think they originally kind of were trying to market this as like a prestige Oscar bait type thing. Yeah. And then they sort of like realized the error of their ways. And now the movie has kind of struck a chord, I think, with the faith-based market. And so they're just kind of taking advantage of that and trying to kind of, squeeze a couple more dollars out of this stone.
Yeah. My parents, Dave and Peg Crane, loved this movie in its original form, but I'm sure that they would love it even more, when they without having to like sully their consciences, because you never want to watch something when you're a cultural Catholic that makes you have to go to confession afterwards, even if it's well intended, like Father Stu is. So yeah, I get why they're doing what they're doing, but this also, I think, did we talk about this when it happened? Because I threw it in there, but Fall, that movie about where they deep faked all the swears out of that movie. Yeah, it's funny what people will do to try and make an extra buck. And when we were growing up, it was put out the sexy, like uncut version of the movie with all the tits and ass in it, and all the gross stuff that we had that the MPAA made us take out. But yeah. I mean, whatever you got to do, capitalism. It's hard out there. It's hard out there for everyone these days.
Mm-hmm. And, it kind of leads to a larger conversation in that I guess I kind of wanted your take on this. If you think there's, when it comes to editing a movie for content, like from an R down to a PG-13, or the reverse of that, a PG-13 to an R or an R to unrated, do you think that there's anything that separates doing those things? Like, does one seem more like morally wrong than the other to you, or do you think it's all just kind of the same shit but with a different name, basically?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's a complicated thing because growing up, like, if without censoring, I wouldn't have seen a number of movies because I saw a lot of things on TV. So I always saw the TV edits of things. And actually getting to like see a movie like Pulp Fiction, for example, not on the Spike network, is really quite the experience because you don't really know what movie is actually happening because you're not getting slapped in the face by some of the gore and the swearing and like the N-word getting thrown around here and there because it's Tarantino. The bite is gone. The real edge. The things you encounter in everyday life. In places without, polite society present, you experience that shit. And so, yeah, there's a softening of the work that I, like, ethically can't condone. But then at the same time, it's the entry point. You can't get beyond censorship unless you know what you're not getting, So that's my complicated reply to your question.
Yeah, for some reason, to me, the idea of taking stuff out of a movie is somehow like weirder to me than putting stuff back in.
Absolutely.
I don't know, just the taking away of stuff always seemed a little bit more morally wrong, I guess, or like weirder in that way. But
regardless of what the reason is, because there's a dozen reasons for why it happens. Like I've been watching a lot of Did You Know Gaming videos, like as I edit and do things. And the amount of censorship that happened to Pokemon is astounding, and it's just based on which region you're playing the game in, essentially. So yeah, this kind of thing happens all the time, whether we realize it or not. And I'll lay some seeds. This might be a topic of a mini-sode that I do eventually. I'll leave it at that. But it's a very interesting phenomenon, and I wonder how much of this kind of thing we are going to see. And I'll just throw it out there. I can't remember the name of the documentary, but there was a Mormon guy who was making Mormon edits of movies. And he ran afoul of the MPAA, obviously, because of what he was doing. He was violating copyright law. But that's just the beginning of the story. Like, Google it. I think it'll pop up. But it's this kind of thing. It's censorship, but it's well intended, right? Obviously, no, it's always wrong.
Well, I mean, I was trying to think of sort of silver linings to this whole situation. And the one thing I thought of was, movie studios tend to be skittish about releasing R-rated movies, especially when they have a lot of money invested in them.
Yes, especially these days. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of a rare thing nowadays. And do you think that, studios, if they become more and more open to the idea of doing this, of releasing like multiple different cuts of movies, do you think that that'll kind of give them more confidence in releasing an R-rated cut of a movie? Because then they can always just go double back and say, oh no, we'll release the PG-13 version now because the R version isn't doing so well. Like, do you think that will give them more confidence?
See, I think you've just opened the door towards our dystopian, algorithm-driven future, because that's absolutely what is going to happen. They already kind of do that. Like Marvel makes, they tailor the release to the region. China gets one that is tailored to them, theoretically. Just like the West gets the one that's palatable to them. And eventually, based on what region you're in and what level of membership you have with the service, like a theater, that will determine the version of the movie that you see. And eventually, I think we will see it so finely tuned that, you could just be who you are, Matt Miller, and you could see a version of the movie that I would never see, just based on the parameters that they set within it. That's fucked up, man. You just fucked me up. I don't like it.
Well, I can totally picture like a couple years down the road walking into a movie theater, and if you take a right into theater number 3, you get the PG-13 version of Mad Max Fury Road, and you take a left into theater number 5, you get the R-rated version.
Yeah.
And you can actually choose which one you want to see based on the time.
And that creates quite the conversation, because who's seen the better movie? I guess the argument is they've seen the better movie for them, but at the same time, you're taking something away from the art itself, if we're still going to delude ourselves into calling this stuff art. But when it costs this much money, they can't just write it off anymore. Even though they will just completely write things off to the point that no one gets to see them, apparently. Oofta. This is quite the can of worms we've opened up with this news story about a Mark Wahlberg movie that no one but your parents saw. But so it goes.